You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Well, welcome back to another episode of E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to my amazing guest, Breanna Greenberg. She's the Vice President of Marketing at a company called Stratia, and they're at stratiaskincare.com. You may have heard of them. They really are a science-backed skincare brand, and they really are making significant waves in the beauty industry. Now, one thing about Breanna, she actually brings a wealth of experience to our conversation today. And, I did a little research kind of before recording. She has quite a track record spanning over 15 years in marketing, digital strategy, and in leadership roles. Her career really is in beauty and e-commerce, and that's kind of where she's put her flag in the sand, so to speak. And it truly is exceptional, some of the things that she's been working on, some achievements in some incredible companies. For example, she had some key positions at Henkel, and I think she led marketing efforts at Breanna, which is their hair care brand. And also she had quite a tenure over at EM Cosmetics. I think they were founded by a beauty influencer, Michelle Phan. But anyways, quite noteworthy to be there at EM Cosmetics. At the end of the day, impressive year over year kind of growth and revenue. And one thing I find, with my further research is that Breanna really has an innovative approach to digital marketing. And that's one of the takeaways that I've seen so far is her ability really to drive significant growth. She, constantly is adapting to the changing landscape, because we know there's a lot of things going on with social selling, e-commerce strategies in general. At the end of the day, she truly is, in my opinion, a pioneer in this field. And it's one of the reasons why I want to have her on the show today. Another thing that I find quite interesting too is that her knowledge is not just in e-commerce, because I think that she has a lot of skills outside of that. When I think about social media, I think about how the evolution of just digital marketing as a role, in driving sales and kind of a lean marketing methodologies. I think she really digs deep into a lot of that. And I think that's what's pretty impressive. That's why I want to have her on the show today. I really want to unpack a lot of insights. And so whether you're looking to kind of refine your social media strategy, or you want to maybe improve your team leadership, or you want to gain maybe a deeper understanding of the beauty and the e-commerce kind of landscape as it relates to beauty and skincare, I think today's episode is going to be pretty exciting. So let's jump in. So hi, Breanna. Welcome to E-commerce Fastlane.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for that incredibly kind introduction. I am beyond grateful to be here, and I can't wait to talk all things e-commerce, social media, and leadership with you. It's going to be a really fun time.
Now, to kick things off, can you share with us how you first got involved in e-commerce? It's always interesting to me, people's career paths, and what kind of drew you to the beauty industry?
My journey to e-commerce was a really interesting one. I had been a retail manager in my hometown, and then I got my first real-world opportunity to move to Los Angeles and start as a social media manager at a company they owned a lot of comedy clubs. They managed all of the top talent of the day, and they did a lot of production like ABC specials and things like that. I got this opportunity to be a social media manager for their digital leg. And that was just an incredible experience. I moved out. I didn't know a soul. That was before, there was Uber or like all the apps where you could connect and meet people. So that was a really, really interesting time. And to be honest, it was a time when being one of the first social media managers, it didn't really mean that I was just managing social media. I was building websites. I was updating websites. I was building e-com like merch shops for the different major talent, doing paid to sell out arenas and comedy club ticket sales, and even email. Like that was before like Klaviyo or MailChimp or any of the major platforms. So we had built our own, and I was kind of blasting millions of people with like HTML emails and trying to code them and put the images where they were supposed to be. So it was a really, really interesting time, kind of, right as things were about to kind of burst and expand. And so it was an incredible opportunity. I got to, kind of curse in Spanish as George Lopez 1 minute. And then I got to pretend to be a historic hotel another minute. And I just got exposed to so much. And also the big draw for me was I was able to have a seat at the table very, very young. I was able to kind of join meetings with these executives. And then I was the social media girl. Like at that time, it was kind of considered a young person's job. So let's bring the social media girl. If there's a question we need answered about a platform, like she'll be here and she can just kind of like take it away. And so that was really powerful just to understand how these major executives were making decisions, how they were thinking about things. Truly just an incredible experience that really launched my career. And I'll forever be grateful for that. But the only thing is that I was sometimes the only or one of two maybe females in the organization. And I really craved female leadership. I think from that point, I kind of made the decision of, okay, for the rest of my career, I'm always going to kind of seek out roles that have at least one female in a leadership position. I find that really important. And so that's how I got into beauty. I got hired at Toni & Guy, working for the founding family, getting to understand photo shoots and production. I built their first e-com shop, which included like taking all the photos, building out the site, doing all the email marketing myself. I managed social for North and South America and just so many fun things. And so from that point, I've spent the last decade in beauty. I absolutely love it. I've done everything from professional and consumer hair and hair care, color cosmetics, and now skincare.
Now, clearly you have been in the forefront of social media since the early days. And so from your perspective, like how has the landscape changed for e-commerce brands, particularly for customer acquisition and kind of engagement metrics?
That is such a good question. To be honest, everything has gotten easier. It used to be that if you did a Shopify site, that was just for kind of like a B or C level client. Like you just needed to get something up quick. So we'll use Shopify instead of building our own like site from the ground up or using a more quote unquote sophisticated platform of that era. I'm thinking about things like Magento and some of those older platforms. So it's gotten a lot easier because now Shopify is kind of, it's king and there's so many wonderful things you can do with it. But in terms of marketing in general, in the digital sphere, there's really nothing new under the sun. I think about things like influencer marketing, and it reminds me of like Tupperware parties in like the 50s and 60s. Like these are kind of the same practices, but now they're just a little bit different because of the technology that we have. And that the other thing about the technology that we have is, like I mentioned before, we were having to do everything kind of from scratch. We were having to build systems from scratch. I even remember I needed to film like a YouTube tutorial and I had this huge DSLR and I was trying to figure out lenses and lighting. Whereas now, for the most part, if you need to film a social media tutorial, you can do a lot of that on your phone. And there's a lot of great editing software. You don't have to be like an expert anymore at Premiere or whatever the platform is. There's just a whole lot more opportunity to have a lean team and really go for it. Other things that I really have noticed and I absolutely love is you don't have to have these mega budgets to be buying spreads in magazines. You don't have to have billboard money to get started. You can really it's a very low barrier to entry to start creating some content, to build a website on a platform like Shopify and really just get your product out there. The technology and all of the advances of these last years has been nothing short of incredible. And it really makes it, even though it's saturated, it's still, in my opinion, one of the easiest times in present history to build a business.
Now, Stratia has built what I would say a pretty strong reputation really by focusing on the science-based kind of skincare products that, from what I can see, really deliver amazing results. I looked at some of the UGC on some of your product pages, and it really is incredible, kind of the quality of the product. And I think from what I can see from the outside, the marketing approach seems to emphasize more on the transparency. There's a lot of education. And I think it's interesting how it's being implemented. less trendy ingredients, less flashy packaging and stuff like that. So can you kind of walk us through your approach to this sort of marketing?
You are absolutely right. Stratia is absolutely not about following trends. It is one of the most unique companies I've ever gotten to work at. I've done everything from huge corporations to legacy brands with founding families, celebrities, influencer. I've done it all and I've never seen anything like Stratia. So we were founded by Ellie Reed, who was just obsessed with scientific research, and what she knew of the science, she wasn't seeing in regards to like the inky list when she was shopping at Sephora of what the ingredient really were and what they meant in terms of like what levels were in things. So she was just making skincare for herself and she was giving out the extras on Reddit. She says it's like baking a batch of cookies. Like she couldn't just make one bottle. It was kind of like a batch. So she had this excess and she was giving it away. And Stratia, that's how Stratia was born. Actually, people just they were craving the formulas. They really liked it. And so she started making more and she opened a Shopify site and the rest was history. So for the first 5 years, it grew organically through word of mouth and Reddit. And there was actually no formal marketing at all until after that 5th year. And they're profitable year over year. So she's really done something truly unique in the industry. And she also has a really unique approach. So she cares about the science. She wants to demystify like the science behind skin. I think a lot of brands out there are, very esoteric, almost like here we are the experts and we'll distill the information that you need and provide it to you. Whereas at the end of the day, everything I know about her is she's really not in it to sell skincare. She really is just excited about how cool skin is as an organ. And she wants to create a better educated skincare customer. So I think that really, really shines through in terms of our marketing strategy and not going after marketing as like a gimmick, but just using that as a megaphone to share our core values and share some of that education that we're so passionate about. Allie is definitely much more the Bill Nye the Science Guy type of educator versus really stiff and intentionally using words that are too big for a layman to understand. And that was really important for me. I, believe it or not, grew up with a single mom who had been a genetic engineer. And so all my life, I kind of had her and she's the sweetest person, but I had her kind of like in the back of my mind. I think she's not bothered by anything except when people use science to kind of like peddle something or like maybe not be the most honest about things. And that kind of always like really ruffled her feathers. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I met Ellie, and I felt like I get the perspective and really being transparent and honest about how we share the brand was, extremely important. Some other really cool things about Stratia that I've never seen with any other brand. So we have a lab in HQ, and that's where the marketing office is. That's where Allie is every day. She's the chemist. She formulates all the products. We have ingredients and packaging come into our office. And then from there, everything else that happens to Stratia is under our roof, our lab in HQ. So we're formulating everything. We're hand bottling it. We are shipping it to your door with an all-female team, which is also very rare to have an all-female warehouse and production team shipping it to your door. So it's much more sustainable. I was able to do a whole sustainability refresh last year and gain to use high levels of PCR and also share that story of how usually things are coming from all parts of the world before they get to your door. And there's a much smaller carbon footprint with how we were doing things. So all that's super, super interesting. And I think inspiring for our marketing team. So yes, we're not playing on marketing trends, but we are able to showcase in a more transparent way the whole process. And like I said, that's not something I've ever gotten to see. Typically, when you're making a formula, it might be in another country and they don't just like let you have access to film or share that with your audience. And we're able to do that, which is incredibly powerful.
What's interesting, Gen Z buyers and gosh, even alpha buyers now, TikTok really has become a very powerful platform for new customer acquisition, like finding net new customers and just the awareness campaigns and then the actual conversions that can happen on TikTok and through TikTok shops. So what sort of strategy have you found most effective for leveraging TikTok in the beauty and the skincare market?
I am absolutely obsessed with TikTok. I think the interesting thing about social media platforms is they all give way to the next iteration or the next platform in the future. So it's always important to kind of get your best practices right with whatever platform is resonating at the moment, because you're going to kind of see it again. I think about things like Periscope, and even though Periscope doesn't exist, that idea of live streaming to an audience is very much alive and well today. So overall is always very important to me. So when it comes to TikTok, I would say Gen Alpha, which my daughter is Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is skincare obsessed, but that's not who we're really seeing on TikTok. At least for our brand. For our brand, we're seeing millennials. We're seeing really everyone like 65 to 20, I think, is probably more of the audience that we're reaching versus a younger subset. And it's incredibly powerful. It's really, really great and interesting to be able to meet a new audience. I think, some of what's happened in terms of like Google and Meta, it's so saturated and they have so much data. And I feel like sometimes you're kind of hitting like the same customer over and over again, or the same type of customer, whereas TikTok really gave way for us to meet a net new customer, which is really awesome. But there's a few other ways I think beauty brands can be winning right now. We're not a brand that like plays on trends. When it comes to TikTok, we're able to provide an expert opinion and perspective on some of the trending content. So for instance, making your own sunscreen, which is very popular right now. And we would really say, please go to our skin school, read the blog on stratiaskin.com. Like, please don't make your own sunscreen. It really is not effective and not safe. But things like being able to inform those conversations and provide educational content around that in quick video form that's easy to understand has been really powerful. Well, I think one of our most viral TikToks is really around the differences between highly melanated skin and less melanated skin and what that means for skincare. And to be honest, we talk a lot about our products are gender free. We talk about skin as an organ and how there is not as many differences in terms of gender and background to your skin as an organ as I think the industry would like us to believe, maybe for marketing reasons. So kind of demystifying that skin science has been really helpful and resonates really well on TikTok. There's a lot of people talking on TikTok and it's not necessarily always the experts. I think the experts that do exist on that platform, though, have been really phenomenal in propelling the truth forward and educating people overall.
Now, in other podcasts, you've mentioned a little bit about lean strategies for optimizing success. And so it'd be great if you could kind of share with my audience some specific examples of how you've applied this sort of approach to marketing and leadership with the Stratia company.
This is one of my favorite topics and something that I've been able to make tremendous strides on at almost every corporation I've gotten to be at in terms of just cost savings and being a little bit more intentional with budget and making some pivots, typically to the tune of a few $100,000 to millions per year, depending on the size of the business. So there's a couple of things to unpack. One, there's been so much in terms of digital and the tools for e-commerce in the last 10 years. Like I mentioned before, you used to have to build a website from the ground up. You used to have to, for us, we were building our own email databases and like having to code all of that. Now everything is really, really easy to implement. You have tools for subscription. You have tools for bundle building. There's tools for rewards. There's tools for reviews. There's so many tools for every need under the sun. They're typically not the most expensive. They typically work really well with like a standard platform like Shopify. So I think that's kind of the number one thing. If you haven't looked at your tech stack in a year, I would suggest revisiting it at least every year and seeing what's new out there and kind of like the pricing on things. I know for us, even what was like best in class in 2020, 2021 is already outdated in terms of like tech partners. And I'm thinking especially in like the subscription space, there's just so much new technology. It's evolved so much, and potentially some of those giants that existed a few years ago that were kind of the staples, they might be a little bit more of dinosaurs now. So definitely take a look at that. Other things that we've seen tremendous strides with is really moving from like a major agency approach to bringing a lot of things in-house. So when I joined Stratia, We had an agency for everything from web to SEO to email and SMS, all those retention channels. We had an agency. We had an influencer agency, a PR agency, a paid agency. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting some of the agencies, but they're a social media agency. It was really disjointed for a number of reasons. One, because every agency has a different graphic designer. No matter how consistent you try to be with brand visuals, it's not going to look as cohesive as if it's all coming from the brand itself. And the other one is kind of around like voice. So even if you provide a really detailed marketing calendar and you try to get all the agencies saying the same thing at the same time, it can be a little disjointed because different people are writing it. So the copy is always going to be different. I'm like, we even had an affiliate agency. There was a lot of agencies. So for the most part, we brought everything in-house. And if you build a core team of people that you really trust, people that are extremely passionate, I think that's going to do way more for you than potentially an agency would. It depends on obviously where you are in the business. But in terms of like that growth phase, having solid people that you can trust in-house is so helpful, both in terms of like brand building and brand identity, and also in terms of cost savings. One other thing that we noticed was even like our 3PL and our fulfillment was getting really slow. We brought that in-house and shaved off days from our fulfillment time by having our in-house team. And then that's great for the customer because they understand who's shipping out their product. They understand who the emails are coming from. They kind of know your team and it feels much more personal because it is personal. There's just a few people, at least at Stratia, we have about 10 people. Then we're doing the majority of things. Obviously, there are times where you need to seek expert help, in which case we do. But for a lot of the day-to-day, it's been way more impactful for us to do things in-house through a team than to kind of outsource all the little pieces.
Now, the beauty industry is known for a lot of rapid changes. There's a massive amount of competition. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry here in the US. And so how do you stay ahead of the trends while kind of maintaining, Stratia's commitment, as we talked about already, this kind of science-based formulations?
So the good thing about Stratia is we don't have to focus too much on keeping up with trends. So typically with most brands I'm testing every new product launch that comes out from all of our competitors. I'm incredibly intentional about what is happening in the market. But with Stratia, we really take a different approach. For full transparency, a lot of smaller to mid-sized brands have somebody like myself in marketing saying to the chemist or the factory or the product development team, hey, I want a product that is similar to maybe 3 different benchmarks that already exist in the industry. I want to have these couple of trending ingredients and I want it to have this type of finish. And then you kind of work together to create a final product. And then marketing, after they've kind of informed what is being made, they get to take that and kind of put a little spin on it to make it sound really new, exciting, and something like that you really need, that it's solving sort of some sort of problem. And that's how a lot of products are coming to market. But when you do things that way, there's a lot of misses and it's not intentional. And a lot of things I didn't even realize. I didn't realize what we were saying. I didn't realize what we are pushing. But at the end of the day, the products end up being very diluted. 1, because they're based off of something that potentially already exists. 2, there might be some really loose correlations between what marketing is saying and what the product actually is and is doing. And that's how everyone, for the most part, is producing new products. So Allie is taking a different approach. She looks at the research, the scientific research. She's always looking at like what new ingredients are coming to market. If she sees something that resonates and she thinks, okay, this is going to solve a problem, she makes sure that it doesn't already exist in the industry or it doesn't exist at least at a really attainable price point. And then she'll formulate something, which is a completely different approach. And then once the formula is done, she will share it with me. And then we get to use marketing to amplify the benefits, but being very honest about the benefits. We're definitely not saying after one use, you're going to have dramatically different results, because the truth is that your skin is an organ and it takes time for things to work. It really truly takes time for these ingredients to work. So it's less about like that flashy instant gratification and more about what the result might be over time. So that's really different, getting to have those blinders on. And also, I think is incredibly helpful for our industry. One thing I've noticed is if something does well, a new brand launches a product, there are a million copycats that come out shortly thereafter in terms of not just like skincare, but definitely color cosmetics as well. And the originality is diminished, and there's so much similarities. Everyone is saying the same thing. Everyone starts using the same words. Once they've seen something perform well for one brand, they start incorporating the terminology and the words and the marketing strategy. And it's just, it all, at the end of the day, it becomes rather meaningless, and it's not so interesting. I think it's a much better idea to take maybe a less traveled approach, really looking at that scientific research, really looking at what could come to market that doesn't exist, and then telling that story in an honest and transparent way.
No, I creeped a bit in your LinkedIn profile before recording today. And, and I mentioned at the top of the show, you've led a lot of great teams through a lot of great organizations over your career. And so what's your philosophy on building and nurturing a very high performing marketing team in the e-commerce space?
This is the very best part of my job. I think it can be hard to search for meaning in terms of roles within e-commerce, especially within beauty, because let's face it, I am not a heart surgeon. I am not saving lives. But where I do find a lot of meaning and purpose is getting to nurture individuals, help grow their careers, and also getting to lead teams. So I absolutely love this question. In terms of what we're looking for the e-commerce space, I'm looking for soft skills. Soft skills are incredibly important for me when I'm building teams. You can teach a lot. You can teach a lot of like the technical skills, but you need to find somebody that is going to be passionate, resilient, optimistic. If one strategy doesn't work, they're going to be right back on the horse with a new strategy. They're going to go the extra mile. And like I said, that really wins every time for me. So that is beyond important. I think that there can be some really highly skilled people, but if they are just saying, hey, like I'm the smartest person in the room and I'm the best at what I do, and I'm just going to kind of keep doing this again and again, rinse and repeat, that's really just a recipe for a brand to become stagnant. Things are always evolving, even though the core, even though we've been using Instagram for a decade now, there's like nuances within the platform. There's new tools. There's new ways to do things in terms of like influencer. There's always something new that you could discover. And the same goes for like e-com and e-com platforms and kind of the innovation side, since it's so quickly evolving on the day-to-day details, even though it kind of stays consistent over time. The day-to-day details, you need somebody that's going to be in the weeds, that's kind of going to be continuing to search and improve themselves, and not somebody, like I said, that's just kind of like, okay, I got the job, I'm here, let me just do the same thing I've done for the last 5 years. It was great then, so it'll be great now, because it's just not going to work out very well, and also isn't going to provide the team spirit that you need to succeed through, some of the challenges that might rise in the future. So definitely passion and soft skills for me is what I'm looking for. And then once you have those team members, really giving them the opportunity to lead something. So either being kind of like the channel expert and leading their channel. If they're really junior and they're not ready to lead a channel, or they're not ready to lead another team member, giving them the opportunity to lead a project. Everyone wants autonomy. Everyone wants to feel personal responsibility for something. And that's truly how you inspire connection and also loyalty to your role. If people feel like they're being micromanaged, they don't feel like they're able to make an impact, they're going to become discouraged, and the turnover is going to be high. But if you give people the opportunity to, within parameters, to lead and evolve and grow, then they're going to be staying with you for a long time and producing much higher quality of work. Something else that's really important is being kind, transparent, and helpful for the team. So you don't want a team member that is, you've got a leader that's volatile, but you never not quite know when they're going to snap. Your team is going to be on edge. If they can't really predict your reaction to things, they're not going to be able to kind of like settle into a flow state and just kind of focus on work. They're always going to be second guessing themselves. And they also might be snuffing out kind of the next new idea before it ever gets brought to light if they think that they have a leader who is going to turn on them on a dime or not have their back. So all of that's really important. And then another great part of my job is I obviously keep an open door, but aside from like listening and providing support, kind of mowing down any obstacles that my team might face so that they can kind of just continue to do their job and not have to worry about putting out a lot of fires. So yeah, all of those things I think are really, really important. I've been in a lot of uncomfortable situations, to be honest. I've been in leadership positions getting to hire people and lead people for the last 15 years. Early in my career, I was having to lead people that were much more senior and had much better technical skills than I did. And so that was really difficult, trying to find a way to earn the trust of people that have been doing something much longer than you have. And then I think it's also the same with some of the younger generations coming up. You really, really have to earn the trust of your team. Nothing is ever given. I think giving them the why of when you have to make difficult decisions goes a long way. Like I said, I think that kind of like that consistency over time is incredibly helpful and really allowing people to do what they're best at and molding the team around individual passions and skill sets is also helpful when you have that opportunity. So I think that that's something that you can definitely do in small to mid-sized companies. And I think it's a little harder as you get into bigger corporations. But speaking of bigger corporations, so I was at Hinkle, which is the second largest professional beauty brand in North America outside of L'Oreal. And they gave us incredible training. I will never forget one leadership training. They had somebody come in and they were giving this example where they had built a playground for kids and the kids were just they were on the monkey bars. They were going down the slides. They were really enjoying the new playground. And that was that. And then they put a fence around the playground. And when they had a fence around the playground, the kids started playing tag. They were running to touch one side of the chain link fence and they were running back to the other side. And all of a sudden they're playing in a much larger space because they had some parameters. So I think that there is a misconception that millennial bosses can be maybe pushovers or, there's some negative connotations. But I think if you give some guardrails that can help everyone feel really, really comfortable in their role, and those guardrails are to the benefit to everyone and help your team play in a bigger space.
Now, can you share a challenging situation? Because I know things are not all roses when it comes to marketing and running teams, but can you talk about a challenging situation that you faced at Stratia and then how you've overcome it? Like, are there any lessons that you can share with my audience today that could benefit other e-commerce marketers?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of 2022, we were setting KPIs for the following year for 2023, and we were looking at our social metrics. And we had a few videos on TikTok go viral. Some creators had organically posted about us, and that had done really well. But overall, we had less than 4,000 followers on our Stratia Skin TikTok account. So we didn't look the most legitimate. Some videos were getting, had taken off and had gone viral and were getting views, and some hardly had any views. So I was kind of tasked with this difficult question. Should we reallocate our resources into, the other platforms and channels that are performing better and just kind of let this platform take a pause? And for me, I really struggled with that because, like I said, the social platforms that exist now give way to what will be and what will evolve in the future. So you really have to nail your best practices to stay relevant and to set yourself up for success. So we took a hard look at everything that we were doing, and I actually started to take over the ad buys for TikTok, and we started to pivot and we began doing TikTok ads for engagement for new follower growth. So those ads specifically. And we saw tremendous results. For starters, we went from just under 4,000 followers to over 60,000 followers in a couple months. But more importantly, I was basically boosting the posts that we're doing well organically to a wider audience that had not heard of us. So we saw a huge uptick in terms of our total sales and our new customer acquisition in terms of what Shopify was reporting out. And that was huge for us. We also saw people on post-purchase surveys really identifying TikTok was the number one way people were saying that they had heard of us. So it was super, super powerful. And it was also great from a brand building perspective, because now instead of just like a pretty image or pretty video of your product with, some sensorial application and a few features and benefits, we were actually being able to like show off what makes Stratia. So we were showing content around skin, like the science of skin. We were showing like Allie making products in the lab. We were showing our manufacturing. We were showing our team. So anyways, long story short, that was really helpful for us, because not only were we getting a new audience, not only were we increasing total sales, but that content that we were kind of meeting customers for the first time with was content that was really core to our brand identity. So we were attracting a much better audience. So we weren't just attracting beauty users. We were attracting people that liked cosmetic chemistry. We were attracting people that liked learning about the science of skincare and found that interesting. So it was extremely helpful for us. I think in terms of TikTok, that's something that I've seen at a number of brands kind of pick up very, very quickly. Right now, we're seeing, and I'm sure everyone else is seeing, that, TikTok is really pushing lives. So when you do the lives consistently, your TikTok shop does much better. So I highly suggest participating in lives. But I had a similar experience. So I was at CEA's Beauty Incubator, and I was working on the very first brand, which was Play. We did some huge things. So I did a collaboration with Sony for Cobra Kai, and I filled the photo shoot with stunt women and like MMA fighters. And it was a really, really big collaboration. We had, around the same time, we had the biggest activation at Revolve Fest, which happens at Coachella at the Revolve area. So I was applying kind of product and meeting and having a huge booth, meeting, hundreds and hundreds of the biggest celebrities and influencers. And we also had a huge 10,000 square foot pop-up that ran for a month. The first day being like media icons within the beauty industry and like, all the magazines and beauty influencers. Then another day was like a Cobra Kai collaboration. So that was the whole cast from Cobra Kai. And again, a lot of MMA fighters and stunt women and Olympians. And then the third day was TikTok. Culver City office sent like their influencers over to our event. And it was like a wide variety. We had like cleaning TikTokers and we had fashion TikTokers, and it really ran the gamut. And that TikTok day was really what catapulted us from having just a few. I think we had like 5,000 followers, and then we ended up with over 50,000 followers after that weekend. So after all of that, after, a full weekend of Revolve Fest and our huge booth, after having a collaboration with Sony, after having so much media attention, it was like that TikTok, that TikTok algorithm doing its thing. So you really, really don't know what's going to be the simple thing that propels you to the next level with TikTok. But what I love about it is that it really evens the playing field. It doesn't matter who has the most money. It doesn't matter, who has the most clout. It could just be the everyday person or a brand with just like a compelling point that makes all the difference. And in terms of like why that pop-up event was so successful with the variety of TikTok talent was because it was incredibly active. So I had a custom built bounce house that was like larger than life. I think it was like 20 feet tall, and you had to climb a ladder to get on it. There was like roller skating, there was slides, there was so many different things to like create an action on and interact with. So it was just like that culmination of so many people posting all these different activities they were doing within that space. So all of that to say, there's always going to be challenges, but there's always going to be a way to win on a new platform. And personally, I'm having so much fun with TikTok, but I also can't wait to see what's next. Social selling, live social selling seems like it's kind of the big thing right now, but that could change at any moment. And I really can't wait.
Now, Stratia really has experienced significant growth. I mean, I even ran some SEO tools today through the website, and you can really see the inbound link profile and the traffic. And so clearly there is this trajectory up and to the right. So it's pretty significant. And, you play a key role in that continued growth. But what are some of these KPIs that you focus on to truly measure success? And then how do you use that data to inform the marketing strategies and team that you're involved with?
In terms of KPI, the North Star will always be total sales. So truly, how much is our D2C bringing in? How much is our B2B bringing in? How much is Amazon bringing in? What's that total revenue look like? And so, yes, total sales is always going to be kind of the number one most important KPI. Conversion is also really important. That tells me a lot. If we see a dip in conversion, that tells me that there's like an issue with potentially like marketing strategy. And if there's a spike in conversion, that tells me that we're onto something in terms of that story selling aspect and what we might want to iterate more on. Other things that are important, AOV, I think that's always an interesting one to keep an eye on and see how you can kind of like boost that AOV. And I think that there's so much in terms of upsell and cross-sell opportunity with some of like the tech partners you can integrate with. I think for Stratia, one of the number one things that we're looking at is also like new customer versus return customer in terms of like that piece of what that breakdown is in terms of total sales and like number of new customers versus returning customers. So this is probably the one that informs the biggest piece of strategy. We are obviously going to use much different tools and practices to reach our returning customer and like that kind of like that retention pipeline versus what we would do to meet a new customer. And meeting a new customer is maybe the most exhilarating part, I'd say, of e-com, because that's, that strategy can change much more quickly and you can be much more agile with that and kind of like test and turn things on and off. So those are kind of the core things in terms of our D2C presence. And then obviously CAC and ROAS is what I'm most interested in terms of what paid is doing. But regardless, attribution is such an interesting topic right now. And I think, we're all really in the same spot. Every platform is trying to take credit for the same sales. So it's really, really hard sometimes to understand exactly what's going on in terms of your different channels and what they're bringing in. So we lean on in-platform metrics as well as like Shopify metrics, but also having some custom like third-party dashboards are going to be really helpful. Obviously, if you're big enough to have like a data partner, that is great. But even like on the day-to-day, like personally, I like Triple Whale. I've been using it for a while and I really enjoy it. But there's many others that will basically kind of like distill the metrics and you'll be able to see the data in different views. And then it's not necessarily what the data says that month, but you look at the delta. So what were the changes month over month from a third party instead of looking at it directly from like in platform. And I think that gives us the greatest indicator of the reality of what might be happening. So yeah, all of it is very important. And I think another great thing with when you are D2C primarily is that you're able to kind of toggle things on and off in a much quicker way. And so you're able to understand your wins and you can iterate on those wins in a much different way versus when you have like a big retail presence or a big split and you're waiting on some like more of that like long game brand awareness to trickle through, like things like in-store activations and out of home and things like that.
Now, customer retention is certainly crucial for all businesses, but I also believe in this particular industry, when we talk about the skincare and beauty market, retention strategies really are the holy grail. I mean, we know that the CAC, this customer acquisition costs, are quite high. Usually the first transaction is like negative. It's never break even. So how do we get that second and third sale? How do we get a subscriber potentially? And that builds this lifetime value. So do you have any approaches that you've used with Stratia that you can implement and others can learn from about how you keep customers coming back?
Luckily, when it comes to skincare, retention is way more about the formula in your actual product than the e-commerce of it all. We are incredibly fortunate that Ali has made some incredible formulas that people are very loyal to. Skincare is something you're either going to notice a difference or you're going to enjoy the experience or you're not. And if you do enjoy it, it's such a personal experience that you're typically much more loyal to that product. But in terms of retention channels and what we do for retention is we drive kind of value through education, specifically creating honest and easy to understand education. We've talked a little bit about some of the brands that use like kind of like fringe science or like maybe like some interesting correlation to push things, or they try to be really, really esoteric and you don't really understand really what they might be saying. So being really honest, open, transparent, and easy to understand has been super powerful for us. And also because this is the most educated our skincare consumer has ever been. They want to know every detail about the ingredients, why the ingredient is there, what the ingredient does, where it's coming from, all of the above. And people can't get enough of that right now, which is really cool to see. So definitely education has been really important to our retention strategy. And then also making sure that all of our customer touch points actually are providing some sort of value. So everything from email to site to SMS to Instagram and TikTok, we try to see it through our customers' eyes and like understand like, okay, what's in it for them if they're going to be giving us support or giving us their attention on these different platforms. And then we tailor the content to support that mission, that support the mission of what really is in it for them, to keep them kind of coming back for more. And I'd say that for the most part, like the majority of the strategy is around that, is just around that, providing that continued value over time. Of course, we do lots of other things. I mean, there's so many cool things you can do in terms of subscription now and rewarding people with subscription, like the surprise and delight that you can offer your VIP customers or at different points in their journey, in their subscription journey. There's also tons of things that we can do with like rewards platforms now. They're way more agile and nimble. So rewarding people through different experiences and products at different purchase values and by taking different actions and kind of keeping them engaged that way. We've also played around with some other like kind of retention and brand building pieces, but I would say it's less about like the net new innovation and more about getting things right with the core retention platforms and just making sure that your tech is as optimized and up to date as possible so that you can be providing a superior offering and not just like what everyone else is doing. I think customers are they're so smart, they're so savvy. And right now, especially in this like economic time, they're really looking for kind of like the best deal and the best experience, and they deserve that. So giving them really everything that they would want and a better experience than the status quo is super important. And also, like I said, giving them value if they are going to be kind enough to continue to engage with your email marketing and things like that, making sure that they actually receive something and it's not just you trying to get them to buy something all the time is so helpful and so important. And also it's a much more interesting way to kind of exist in marketing and e-commerce is through that more like that selfless concept.
You know, as I mentioned, rolling into Q4 right now, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and just this whole holiday season literally is just around the corner. I mean, every email I open up, I always see a new webinar or a tips or how-to guide, an ebook. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot of great education. And the whole idea is start early is kind of like the feeling I'm getting. And there are a lot of strategy and a lot of tactics that can be implemented to have a very successful Q4. And so I'm going to flip it back to you just because you're in the weeds right now. Like, what's some of your top recommendations for brands to, I guess, number one, prepare for BFCM and holiday times? And then how do you actually execute a successful campaign?
Q4 is such an exciting time in e-commerce, and this year is sure to be no different. I think is so much information kind of being hurled at us all the time, but definitely looking at your year over year Q4 metrics, seeing, how the sales went for you, analyzing differences in your promotional mix and promotion dates and offering is going to be really helpful. But then also kind of looking at what the market's been doing. At least for me in beauty, I've never seen so much promotionality, especially online, around beauty products. I mean, even the major retailers are doing more than ever in terms of promotions and huge sales. But we're seeing massive discounts across the board. We're also seeing massive GWPs, like 3 full-size products when you spend $100. And that's really across the board. Stratia, we are not a very promotional brand. We already have a really affordable price point. And since we make everything in-house to kind of keep costs down and put as much as we can into our ingredient and ingredient quality, we don't have like a huge margin to play in terms of sales. So we try our best to stay away from that. But obviously, we always participate in Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and it's such a fun time for us. But this year is definitely different. I think over the years, this time frame has become a little bit more crowded in terms of what you're getting in terms of ROAS for paid and things like that. However, we're also seeing, because there was additional promotionality this year, at least in the beauty sector, I have a feeling that our customer, not just ours, but beauty customers in general, are definitely probably going to be waiting for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and their expectations are likely going to be at an all-time high. Anything that a brand can do around offering like a surprise and delight portion of the promotion is going to be really helpful, and anything that makes it easier to gift. So, those spend $50 or spend $100 and get a free full-size product is going to give you a nice bang for your buck in terms of giftable products. So if you have a sale like that and a customer might be placing a couple of orders, they're able to make some gifts and you're able to reach a new customer that way. And like I said, anything in terms of being memorable. I know minis are really big around holiday. I wonder if that's going to be enough this year. If like a travel size or a mini is going to satisfy the customer, I have a feeling that you're going to need maybe more of a unique and compelling offer, something very novel, something that is maybe really interesting to look at in terms of like a GWP. But yeah, I'm really excited. We particularly have always done 2-week sales. We've always done like this shop slow approach for Cyber Weeks. But I would anticipate that other brands are going to start doing it sooner and sooner. And so I guess we'll wait and see, but it's definitely going to be a jam-packed Q4. And like I said, I do believe we'll probably see the deepest discounts we've ever seen in terms of like a cyber period.
Now, if we look ahead a bit, are there any emerging trends or any kind of technologies that you think are going to have a big impact on e-commerce and most specifically in the beauty and kind of skincare market? And based on that, how is Stratia kind of preparing for these sort of changes?
When we think about what's coming down the pipeline, things that are definitely evolving and becoming even better is the ability for personalization, to be able to personalize your customer's journey based on where they are in the funnel, providing and serving up a different experience for somebody at the top of the funnel versus the bottom of the funnel. And some of the new tools out there in terms of personalization that makes that so much more effortless than it's been in the past. I think people, with so much noise and with so much choice, they have a higher expectation for brands and how they're being spoken to, and they are craving that personalization. So I think all the personalization tools and the ones especially that integrate with your website and your existing marketing mix are going to be super, super helpful, and we are things we keep an eye on and test. Same thing goes with AI. There are so many cool AI tools and features that are taking data and then either providing your pop-up at the right time or providing the right cross-sell, upsell. Those things, all those AI tools are getting so much smarter. And we're also seeing them start to integrate really nicely with some of the existing things you're already using, the Klaviyo has an AI beta and a bunch of the other platforms that we just use day to day already. So that's also been really fun to see, especially because I think there's even a new one with Meta that looks really interesting, because now you don't even need the third-party AI data tools to get that benefit. It's just going to be built right into the platforms. So seeing that happen, it makes me think that the third parties are going to be even smarter, if not now, in the very soon future, to kind of combat all those huge players making their own versions. So I would say AI and personalization, obviously 2 buzzwords we've been hearing for a long time, but I feel like we're finally at the point where it's working right. It's working right. It's working for multiple size brands and not just the really big players. So I'm super excited.
Well, Breanna, I've learned today. I mean, that's one thing about a good podcast is there's this opportunity to distill down someone's career. And I appreciate a lot of your sharing today. Do you have any kind of final thoughts or any takeaways that you would like to share with our listeners?
Thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure to be able to speak with you and also be able to connect with your audience. There is so much changing in the market and with digital in general, but I hope after this conversation, it feels so much more manageable and that everyone leaves with an optimistic perspective. There's nothing that you can't push through with a little bit of passion and innovation. And I really do believe this is the easiest time we've ever had as marketers to reach our audience. And it's just such a joy to be able to be at this point in history, to be honest.
So What would you recommend as kind of the next steps for listeners who would like to learn more about Stratia, the skincare company, or maybe even connect with you personally?
We would absolutely love for you to try Stratia. Feel free to email me at Breanna@stratiaskin.com, and I will send you a special code so you can get your hands on some of our science-backed formulas. And if you want to talk anything tech, digital, feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. And as always, you can reach out to us on TikTok or Instagram at Stratia Skin.
Breanna, thanks for sharing insights and your recommendations today. It's been a very impactful and educational episode.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It was so nice to talk e-commerce principles with you, and always such a pleasure. And to your audience, I really appreciate the time you took to listen. I hope this provided value to you. If not, feel free to email me and let me know what you'd prefer to talk about. And if you have any questions, I'm always here.
Well, that's it for today's episode of E-Commerce Fastlane. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in. This podcast really is all about helping you grow your Shopify store. And we bring the best minds in business to share their secrets so that you can take your brand to the next level. And every time you listen, you really are taking the steps towards building that amazing direct-to-consumer brand that I know you've been dreaming of. And it means the world to me that you've invested your time here. Your dedication to learning and growing is truly inspiring. And whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro, remember that I'm here for you. I'm cheering for you every step of the way. Your success really is the heartbeat of this podcast. And we're here to support your Shopify journey in any capacity. So enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-Commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.